Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the Covenant Woods Dollars and Cents program that we're having today, the webinar. We've got some exciting people on today that we'll be introducing you to. My name is Jason Eamon. I'll be your host today. A couple of housekeeping things just before we get started. On your Zoom window, you'll see down at the bottom, there's a Q&A button there. And feel free during this event, if you have questions or you want to submit anything within the Q&A section, we'll be happy to try to either answer it during the webinar or we'll get to it at the end once we get through our program today. Hopefully we'll get to about an hour today or a little bit less to let everybody get back to their very busy, exciting lives. But we're very happy that you all joined today, and I'm going to turn it over to Anna Ford and let her kick us off. So hi, Anna.
Good morning, Jason. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to introduce the rest of our panel. Well, first of all, my name is Anna Ford, and I'm the marketing manager at Covenant Woods. And I'm joined by Logan Majewski, who is our marketing representative. She works with me as we help prospects make the decision to come to Covenant Woods. And I'll introduce you to Charles Nance. He is an elder law attorney, and I'll let him tell you a little bit about his background.
Great, thanks. I was speaking one time and somebody lost their notes on what I said. Well, when we were married, he's a great guy. And I said, that's probably the best thing I've ever gotten. I'm an elder law attorney, estate planning attorney here in the Richmond area. And I'm also, I had the joy of having my parents live at Covenant Woods for many, many years. They're among the really early people to move into the cottages, and they went through the whole continuum there, and it was really a wonderful, wonderful experience. So I'm a true believer, I put it that way.
Great.
Well, great. Thank you for joining us today. And then we also have Richard Adams, who is a financial planner. So I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself as well.
Good morning. I have a BS degree in finance from Wake Forest University. I started in the financial services profession with Wheat First Securities in 1978. Have been in ever since. My practice primarily has to do with retirement planning for executives and a lot of business owners I work with. And I have some clients at Covenant Woods, and my sister and her husband, they're older than I, are in a continuing care retirement community in North Carolina, close to their children. So I think from going forward here, it's definitely a conclusion that I believe in the continuing care retirement community financial model for those folks who retire.
Thank you. Well, before I turn it back over to you, Jason, I do want to share with the folks who are joining us today a little bit about what it means to be a life plan community or a continuing care retirement community, as we're all familiar with that term. Specifically, Covenant Woods, we are a residential community that is designed for folks who are 62 years or older, those that are planners and want to move into an apartment or cottage of their choice and enjoy the independent living side of Covenant Woods, but also know that they will be taken care of should they need to move to a higher level of care. So with that, we have many different floor plans that are right sized for whatever you're looking for, from a 1-bedroom to 2-bedroom, 2-bath with a den. So many, many options, comprehensive services and amenities. You know, leave the vacuum cleaner at home. We have housekeeping services, meal plan, activities. We're on 90 acres of beautiful land where a lot of the land is protected by the Chesapeake Bay Watershed Act. So many things to do on campus. We are an accredited community, CARF accredited. So just as colleges and universities can be accredited, so can communities like Covenant Woods. And we have a 135-year tradition of taking care of seniors. So I hope as we learn from our panelists today and have their insight into the benefits of a continuing care retirement community, you'll also think about Covenant Woods and what that might mean for you. So Jason, I'll turn it
Great.
back over to you, but as Jason said, you will have the opportunity to ask questions throughout the webinar. So feel free to do that with the Q&A button.
For sure. Thank you, Anna. All right. And I also wanted to make one other quick point, and that is that this is the 5th and final installment of our Smart Senior Series for 2020. We've talked about that. And we're really excited that if you go to covenantwoods.com/events, you can get to all of those events and be able to view the videos on there of our previous events as well. And we're ending 2020 with a bang with this one. We're also going to make sure that we've got a great program in 2021. So stay tuned for some other really great events that we're going to be putting on as well. So, all right, well, let's get right to our topic today, dollars and cents. And I really wanted to start, maybe, Richard, if we could start with you. And let's just do a high level of talking about some of the benefits of moving to a life plan community or a CCRC that you use when you're advising your clients or you're talking to them from a financial perspective.
At a high overall view, you can divide the population into 3 categories. One is the folks that do not have the assets or the income to move into a continuing care retirement community. And unfortunately, if they have long-term medical care or health care needs, they're either going to end up indigent or possibly in a Medicaid type of healthcare facility, which is not the best option, but it's the only option that they have. And then you have the uber wealthy, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and those folks that have so much money. And I sort of laugh. This is one of my levity pieces. They could light cigars with $100 bills every day and never run out of money. And most folks do not fall into that category. In fact, only there are very, very few that are in that category. And then there's the other folks in the middle, the upper middle class and the upper class that aren't uber wealthy. And there are some significant benefits when they sell their homes to moving into a facility such as Covenant Woods. One is the ability to budget their income so that their assets are not destroyed by long-term healthcare expenses. Preserving the hard-earned assets for the family members that they leave behind, and removal of stress associated with long-term care, healthcare decisions that they have to make immediately, and they're very urgent, and they have to make them sort of in a vacuum. And the removal of stress associated with home maintenance as they get older.
That's great. That's a great point. And that preservation of assets that you kind of, allude to in that conversation, and where you sort of fall, you don't have to be uber wealthy, but you have to have enough assets that your life expectancy will help you live that out, no matter where it is that you live, whether you stay in your home or you stay in a community. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. So how does this factor in for people that are considering what to do with their retirement funds, and how that all comes through? How does this factor in when it comes to the global architecture of financial planning as you're coming up with your long-term goals?
Covenant Woods is a continuing care retirement community. So you pay an entrance fee, and the entrance fee is partially associated with the square footage that you have available to you, whether you have 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and so on. Then you have a monthly expense for food and services and so on and so forth, which also pays for healthcare, ongoing healthcare, whatever it is that you need. And that fee is fixed. So if you are in independent living and you go into healthcare, assisted living, memory care, or even nursing care, your fee does not go up. Now, I had a client that was in another long-term care facility in Richmond that was fee for service, and he was fairly wealthy. he and his wife, their expenses totaled about $8,000 a month, including what they ate, their, discretionary income and so on and so forth. But when he moved into healthcare, that went to $20,000 a month total. And that could be devastating if you are in healthcare for several years and eat up all the assets so you don't have it for, in this case, he passed away, now his spouse or his children and so on and so forth. So having the ability to budget your income so that you don't deplete your assets, I think is a very important financial planning tool. And again, as Jason said, you're preserving those assets for the family members that you move behind. I also know specifically that Covenant Woods has a fund. It's called the Covenant Fund. And if for no fault of your own, your assets are depleted, an example of that would be the market drop of 2008, 2009. And if you're invested properly and you're not giving money away that you shouldn't be giving away, and there's some stipulations in the contract, but if you run out of money for no fault of your own, then the Covenant Fund allows you to stay in your same facility and live your current lifestyle without being turned out.
And I think it's important to note on that part of that conversation too, that is a huge benefit of a not-for-profit versus a for-profit community as well. The not-for-profit really does look for opportunities to help their residents with that long-term if they do get into a financial crisis. Whereas with a for-profit, obviously, shareholders and those types of things come into play, and those opportunities aren't as abundant on the for-profit side. So I think it's important that for the people that are on this webinar and listening to this and watching this, that's a big piece of the puzzle in obviously learning more about senior living and CCRCs and life plan communities in general is, what are the differences between the two? So it's a great setup for that. Let's talk about timing. And Charles, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on this as well after we let Richard. But let's talk about timing. Obviously, the answer to that is everybody has a different time when they're supposed to move, make a decision like this. But how do you advise your clients on the timing of when it's right to move to a life plan community?
The timing varies greatly based on a number of different features. One is your income. If you're still working and you have a substantial amount of income and you're very, very healthy and very active, then you may want to delay. You may not want to move in when you're 62 years old, for example. The flip side of that is that you don't want to wait too long either. And I'll give you a personal experience. As I told you, my sister and her husband, my brother-in-law, who are substantially older than me, she was living, or they were living in their home, and they were putting up Christmas decorations a few years ago, and she backed over her sidewalk and fell and broke her femur in 2 different places, and it terrified her. Then once that happened, they waited for a little while until she healed, and then they moved immediately thereafter after they could sell their home. But they were 83 and 81 at that point. And at the end of the day, it was extremely stressful. And I have heard both of them say numerous times that they wish they had moved 2 or 3 years sooner. So the idea behind that is not to react, but to plan. And don't wait to move until you have a medical emergency, and possibly a medical emergency could preclude you from moving at all. And then you have a big problem. So the idea is that it's different for everybody, but you don't want to wait until you have a medical emergency, and you don't want to wait until you have to react and do it. You want to plan to do it when it is the best time for you based on your finances and your health.
That's a great answer. And I think that's very well put, is that it's important to to focus in on both the financial piece, but also where you're at in life. And I would actually throw it to Anna and Logan. In your experience of being there, what are some of the things that you hear from people that move in? And maybe Logan, I'll ask you this question. What are some of the things after they've moved in? And maybe they were contemplating that question of when is the right time for us to move? What are some of the things that you hear after they move in?
Should have done it sooner. Should have moved sooner. A lot of the times people wait until they do have more of a medical emergency, and then they can't enjoy everything this Covenant Woods has to offer. And moving in while you can enjoy those things is going to be a better benefit for you, because that's what you're paying for as well, as the options to enjoy the amenities and the meal plan and everything we have here.
And Anna, one of the things that we talk about, as we promote the idea of life care, is that idea of that there's a myth out there that once you move to a senior living community, it's just a bunch of really old people and wheelchairs and all those things. And I think most people don't really truly understand the independent living side of what your community offers. Do you want to just take maybe a minute or two to talk through that?
Sure. I mean, the independent living side is basically just like living in your home. The myth is you have to be at Covenant Woods at a certain time of night before the doors lock and things like that, which is not true. You go and come, you stay with your friends, outside of the community, your church groups, your bridge clubs. It's just provides you with the maintenance-free side of living and the independent living side, as well as the amenities that Logan mentioned and the socialization. I think that's the best benefit for the independent living side, because you live longer independently when you have that socialization.
Agreed.
And can I amplify that for a second?
Sure.
For sure.
My father, my parents were about 80 when, maybe 78 and 80 when they moved in, and my dad they'd moved to a one-story house in Richmond, thinking, well, he wouldn't have to get up on the ladder and this, that, and the other, clean the gutters. And he pine tags. Oh my gosh! I mean, it was a lot of maintenance. But he got very isolated. He came out with arthritis. He didn't feel like doing. He rake a little bit and go sit on the sofa and whatever. They moved to Covenant Woods in a cottage out there. Let me tell you, I think my father got 25 birthday cards the first birthday he passed. He was that connected with people. Now he was that kind of guy. Was one younger man that lived there in the cul-de-sac, and he ran every morning. My father figured out what time he'd run by, and he had a coffee cup to refill it as he went. But he was an old newspaper boy, and he liked to pick up people's papers and take it up to the door so they wouldn't get in the rain. But he made friends, and he was so much happier once he's in community with people, and it's a non-financial benefit, but it's
Yeah.
For sure.
You're right. I mean, you can be as involved in things as you want to be, or you can pick and choose what you want to be involved with. But sounds like he had his toes in a little bit of everything, which is great.
I love that walking trail, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is beautiful, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move to you, Charles. Obviously from a legal perspective with your elder law specialty, just talk maybe a little bit about how does it help somebody's family? What are the benefits of making that type of a decision to move to a life plan community?
And before I forget, because I'm getting to not just be an elder law attorney, but maybe an elderly attorney, but I send them to folks like Richard real early to say, that people will just decide, well, I can't afford this. It's too rich for my blood, those kinds of things. And often working with an advisor, you can figure out how to take their CDs and things that just weren't doing much for them and get a higher return. You could tell from the pictures behind me, I'm very focused on children and grandchildren, but not everybody has them, and even those who do have to make this decision. I in my own family's case, that one of the last things my mom decided before moving there was, well, yeah, but if we didn't do this, we'd have more to leave to you all, and I'm like, please don't worry. It's a great benefit to your extended family if there's someone else who gets the first call in the middle of the night and you're the second one, you know. So there are many benefits that way. I feel like there's, Richard, I forgot what you described them, but there's a continuum. You said two groups. I found a continuum of folks as they approach this decision. And some, I say they shiver in the corner, hope nothing bad happens. I call it, you know, doing nothing. And on the other end, and there's a variety of choices. It's everything from a comprehensive sort of elder law plan to a financial retooling that increases their income, as I mentioned, to going into a continuing care community. And there's steps in between. But one of the things that was great in my experience with working with people from Covenant Woods is they've all made that weighing. Is it right for my family? Is this time to, you know, are we saving for the grandchildren? We want to enjoy life now. I mean, they've all come to an affirmative decision and taken steps to solve it. And in this case, moving in this example, Covenant Woods. And I think that gives them a certain commonality, of optimism, of take chargeness, that makes them happier people. So I encourage people who haven't thought about it to consider it, and you know, send them to their financial advisor, send them to the intake office at Covenant Woods, and see if it isn't something that they could do. Because not by no means are all my clients wealthy, and I've never had anyone make that decision and then later regret it. So I'd say sooner rather than later.
Sorry, Charles. How can somebody protect themselves or their families by making a decision like this? How do you advise them on, you know, what sort of protections do they get as opposed to just trying to wing it and do
well,
it?
It's putting some numbers on the table, knowing what's involved. I tell you, I had another financial advisor I knew years ago who said his father kept saying, "I'm just going to die in my kitchen. I'm just, you know, I'm just going to die in my kitchen," and wouldn't consider long-term care or anything else. And unfortunately, you know, he didn't die in his kitchen. He had to go into an unprotected way into nursing home care, and really there was nothing at the end. At least this way, people can decide where that fits on the priority list, and decide what's they're most comfortable with. I find that I mean, there's no one right answer, but I try to let people know that this is a real possibility, and they may be able to do it even when they think they can't or shouldn't. Right. But there's so many non-financial benefits that, again, that call in the middle of the night. You know, there's people who work in these facilities. I used to drive a van from another facility here to my church on Sunday mornings or whatever, and just to hear them talking about the concern that the staff could make more somewhere else. I mean, they could, but it's a sense of mission that most people have. So they're great financial benefits in terms of knowing what your downside risks are or whatever. But there are really so many, as I mentioned, my father's connection with the community, my mom's as well. Their little lunch group still meets, you know, and so there are. It's at least you know it's a thing where you okay, we got to set these funds aside, but we know we're going to be taken care of. We're not going to be a burden to our children, or to, you know, and there's going to be something left. I assume this is, I should know without saying, people have options as far as what part they put down, what return they may get later on, and those are calculations that can say, okay, well, these are my nieces. They're going to have something, but I'm going to be taken care of right now because that's why I saved all these years with Richard. You know, so that's a key thing.
And I'll push it back to Richard. You know, healthcare costs are not going down at this point, at least not for the foreseeable future. So how do you advise your clients with weighing the options of, you know, what assisted living and skilled nursing looks like, and how do they calculate those numbers as opposed to maybe working with Anna or Logan on, you know, figuring out what those numbers could look like in the long run? What are the ins and outs of that? How do you approach that?
There's a couple of things. I was just thinking about it while Charles was speaking. In my 40 some odd years in this profession, I have run into a few actuaries. And one of the things that I learned some years ago, actually, is if a person does not worry about income and security in retirement, they live longer. So, and generally speaking, if you're living longer, you have a happier life because you're not stressed out. But basically, I gave you the number, and this was a Richmond facility. The cost of this gentleman's care and nursing care was somewhere in excess of $10,000 a month, and that was 2 years ago. There are other facilities that aren't as nice, but if you work all your life and you have a nice lifestyle, you don't want to go from a nice house in a community to a mobile home park when you have a problem. So the idea is that if you can budget for long-term care expenses using a CCRC like Covenant Woods, then you don't have to worry about running out of money in retirement, which is huge. And in secondary, you don't have to worry about, well, I'm going to all of a sudden double or maybe even triple my expenses for healthcare. And then how long is my money going to last under those circumstances? And what's that going to do to, my spouse if he or she survives me, and then all of a sudden the money's not there for my children either, which I plan for. It's just huge.
Yeah.
It's a huge burden.
It is a huge burden.
May I say, one of the things that people, because I talk to people all the time of trying to make this decision or something related to this, and without talking to, to Anna and Logan in specific terms, you don't know what's really involved, and so it's important to do that. One of the people a little bit older than I am, I call them maybe the Korea War generation, et cetera, and early Vietnam, they're savers. I mean, they live, people who have substantial assets, they're pretty much living on Social Security in many cases because they just don't spend a lot of money. The mortgage is paid off, student loans, if any, are gone, and this is their time. So, so it's a little scary. You say, well, I'm going to pay this much per month. Everything's included, except your movie tickets, and sometimes they are, So it's worth taking a fresh look at it and seeing if it's right. And it's not right for everyone, but it's worth getting some input from an advisor, from professionals who help with placement, to see if it's right for you.
One of the things we hear often from prospects is, well, I already have long-term care insurance. And I'll either throw that to Richard or to Anna, whoever wants to answer that. Maybe both of you answer it from your own perspectives, but long-term care insurance plays into this conversation as well.
Jason, I'll answer first. I was just thinking about that. You read my mind. I put some long-term care plans in place for some business owners and for some physicians, physician group actually here in Richmond, a couple of physician groups, several years ago. And at that point in time, they had the income to pay 10 years, and then there was no possibility of increases for long-term care costs that were done. They paid 10 years, and after that, if the premium's zero, so if you have 1,000% increase, your premium is still zero. I just talked with a retired high-level government official who's my client. In fact, his wife did research at Bethesda Naval Hospital. They bought long-term care insurance through the federal government individual group plan, which is in theory about as secure as you can get. And their cost went up 25%. And they received a letter when they got the 25% increase letter saying that it was probably going to go up another 25% within the next 5 years. So what you have happen is when you retire, you have a fixed income or close to it. And hopefully maybe your assets and your income from your assets outpace inflation and your expenses. But still, you don't have the flexibility like you do when you are working and your income is going up every 2 or 3 years. And then all of a sudden, your long-term care insurance costs are such with just about all companies. Now, there may be an exception or two, but there aren't many because I've seen the numbers, are such that it's inability, you're unable to afford it. And both of these people, husband and the wife, both spouses, came to the conclusion that they're going to drop it because they don't want to continue to pay the increases, and they've lost about paying, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years worth of premiums.
Right. And on the flip side of that, Anna, from your perspective, sometimes if they do have a good policy, it can actually benefit them as they're moving into a community, correct?
Exactly. We have you can use long-term care insurance with any of our contracts at Covenant Woods. We have a contract that is specifically for someone who may have great long-term care insurance, where they pay a smaller entrance fee. And then when they transition to a higher level of care, they begin to pay the daily rate instead of having that fixed monthly fee. But, I've seen people who, if they have that great long-term care coverage, when they do move to assisted living or a higher level of care, their monthly fees basically nothing because that long-term care insurance just helps to offset that monthly fee payment that you're making to Covenant Woods.
Right. So to Richard's point, if you've got a great plan, then it probably is a benefit. If you're seeing much higher deductible payments or monthly payments for that, then maybe it's a good thing to weigh what the long-term benefits of that plan are. And I think having that sit-down conversation with someone like Richard and Anna would be good to kind of figure out what's the current landscape look like, and what are we sort of looking at over the next 5 to 10 years in where we're headed. So I think that's a great thing to think about.
Jason, I'm not disagreeing with Richard in any way. He knows what's best he knew it was best for that particular client. I was talking to someone who worked with a placement agency that put people in folks' homes to provide in-home care. And a lot of policies will cover that. And
Yes.
I just made this was a number of years ago. I said, well, I guess you'd just drop that if you actually went into a facility like this. Said, oh, no, indeed, for the reasons that Anna mentioned, but also, I'm talking about this is a different facility she's talking about. She said, that's our biggest client. We send private pay people in there all the time because people at a certain level, they want their bath when they want it, not when it's their turn, and to be able to just supplement the great care that's already there on their terms is a super thing, aside from the financial piece of it.
Yeah. And I think really what we're talking about here is that this is a very complicated long-term decision. And, the reason we have Richard and Charles and the Covenant Woods team on today is because it takes a group of people that are truly looking out for your best interest to sit down together and help you plan out what the future of your healthcare or not healthcare. I mean, there's a lot of people that end up, leaving this earth and passing away without ever spending a day in healthcare. And those are the risks that you take in having all the decisions that you make. But I think a big piece today is, there's a lot of people that can weigh in and give you good, educated information that will help you make a good decision, and will take some of that burden off of your shoulders and your family's shoulders so that you're not having to deal with that in times of crisis.
Yeah, just add too, that when we think of healthcare, it doesn't necessarily mean you're there permanently. It could just mean that you're back from the hospital, not quite ready to be on your own yet, and there's someone you can recover in the same building, maybe near your spouse or whatever, before you come back to your apartment or cottage.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's not just long-term care; it's interim care as well.
Yeah. So Anna, how often does Covenant Woods increase rates then, just in general, and what does that schedule look like for somebody that's moving in?
So our fiscal year begins April 1st. So we will have a rate increase every April 1st. That's usually between 2 and 4% increase, which is very much in line with industry average. Okay.
And that's been pretty standard over the past, 10 years or so. That pretty much flows in. And those rates basically cover the cost increases to healthcare, also to wages and things like that for
Exactly.
the
Operation
workers.
cost. Mhm.
Yeah. And when it comes to that question, I'm sure that's as a not-for-profit versus a for-profit, those decisions are made probably in a different manner than they would normally be made at a for-profit, where one is made. And maybe Richard, I'll ask you this question. How do you think, and you may not know exactly, but how do you think that weighs in when it comes to rate increases and things like that at a not-for-profit versus a for-profit?
Basically, a not-for-profit breaks even or tries to. And I know another little bit about Covenant Woods is they have an endowment or an investment fund that supplements when they do not break even. So they're not looking to provide profits for shareholders. And anytime you have less expenses and profits for shareholders is an expense, you're going to have lower fees to crack the nut. So therefore, being in a not-for-profit is you have a long term. You should have a substantial savings just by definition.
Right. Anna, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I want to ask you about a lot of questions always come about contract types. And people hear, well, are you a type A, a type B, a type C? And it's very confusing, even for people that have been in the industry for a long time. Can you just give us a breakdown, at least at Covenant Woods, what the contract types are like and how that plays into this whole financial conversation?
Sure. So we currently offer 4 types of contracts. Our most popular, I would say 98% of our residents choose our standard life care contract, where they're paying the entrance fee that accompanies the apartment or cottage that they choose. And I think like Richard said, that's based on square footage. So you pay that entrance fee. The amount declines at 2% per month over a 50-month period until the balance is 0. However, there is a myth that you can never leave Covenant Woods. We don't want you to leave Covenant Woods. That's not the goal. But should you choose to leave Covenant Woods, you do have the opportunity to get back a portion of that entrance fee that you've paid. With that contract, your monthly fee is going to remain consistent at every level of care, which we've talked about. You have that peace of mind for financial planning, knowing that monthly fee is going to increase between 2% and 4% each year. We also have a 50% refundable contract and a 90% refundable contract. So with these 2 contracts, you are paying a significantly higher entrance fee, but you are guaranteed either 50% of that amount back at the time of death, or if you leave Covenant Woods, or a 90% amount back. So I've had a handful in my 5 years here, maybe 4 or 5 people who've chosen that contract option. I always say, talk to your financial advisor. They may tell you to do something different where your money will grow a little better outside of Covenant Woods versus just waiting for you. And the last contract option is similar to a fee-for-service contract where you're going to pay a lower entrance fee upon moving in. It's about 1/3 less than our standard life care contract, but your monthly fee will change when you enter assisted living or memory care or skilled nursing care, and you'll then pay the daily rate. And this is the contract we talked about with long-term care insurance. If you have great long-term care insurance, that might be the way to go. But Logan and I can certainly look with you at all of these different contract options and show you how your money will look over time with actuarial tables and things like that to help you choose the correct contract for you.
Great. And Logan, piggybacking on that, can you talk a little bit about, how the financial structure works when people might move in, from monthly fees to entrance fees, and how does that work? And then obviously another question would be, what do they get for their monthly fees? Richard and Charles made the point, that everything's included, but what are some of the things, how does that break down?
Sure. All monthly fees are associated with the resident type. So of course, the bigger the residence you choose, the more of a monthly fee you would pay because of square footage. What is included in the monthly fee is a declining meal plan. So that's $1,080 that you would get per person per quarter to spend on food, biweekly housekeeping, utilities, internet, all your appliances like your washer and dryer, stove, maintenance of your residence and grounds, transportation, activities and fitness and wellness programs, campus security, and an emergency call system. So that's all included in that monthly fee. And again, it depends on the resident type you pick for what is the fee.
And what do you find are maybe the biggest myths of what is and isn't covered? I'm always curious about that.
Well, a meal plan is always something that surprises some people because some communities don't include that in their monthly fee. So when they find that out, they find that to be great, because when I tell them that $1,080 is allocated to them per quarter, instead of them paying that extra $1,000, whatever they may per month for food. So that's always a big surprise to some and very helpful.
We did have another question come in from our group, and this is something we get almost every single time we do a webinar. But what is the average age, and maybe Anna, you know this answer, what is the average age of people moving into Covenant Woods?
And we do get that question very often, and it's really hard to say. And I know people want to have an exact number, but in independent living alone, we have people who are less than 62 years of age, because if you're coming in as a couple, only one person has to be 62 years old. And we have someone who's 96. So it's so hard to say, what's the average. But for people who make the final decision to move into a community like Covenant Woods, I would say between 75 and 78 is kind of the sweet spot. Because as we've talked this entire time, you want to move in when you can enjoy the amenities, you can enjoy the social aspects of the community.
Yeah, for sure. Charles, beyond your professional expertise that goes along with what we're talking about today, you've mentioned that your parents lived at Covenant Woods. Can you just talk about it from an adult-child standpoint of what it meant to you for your parents to have lived at Covenant Woods?
Yeah, well, it was just great, and not just for me, but for my children. And they were young; they were middle schoolers when their grandparents moved into the cottage, and they could still have sleepovers and come over and make cookies. And we had our annual Nance family post-Thanksgiving Saturday morning brunch at their cottage, and later even at the apartment. So it was great. I was really blessed. My father, my mother, they were, especially my mom, very forward-looking, and she had the then president of Covenant Woods said she's the first one to ever come to them voluntarily and say, "I think we should probably move to the main building now." Just looking ahead to the next step. So, we all. I mean, listen, I've had health emergencies, and children have even. So it happens as we age even more. I got to the point I could get to the emergency room before they did. I mean, I got, alerted right away that something was going on, and usually it worked out fine. But I'm just saying it was a real peace of mind for me, not just for them, but for me as well. To know that they were really cared for, and I won't go into it, but the emotional connection that the caregivers had for my parents was just touching. It was really remarkable.
Yeah.
I was very happy.
Something that you mentioned earlier that I'm not sure that people really truly understand. There's a large portion, once a person moves to a community like Covenant Woods, there's a large portion of people that if they don't have heirs or they don't have children that they're going to leave their money to, it's astounding how many people decide, the life that they've lived at Covenant Woods and what they see. They actually leave some of their funds or a good portion of their funds to the community as well to be part of that fund that if somebody does run out of money, they'll be able to help cover that, or for large capital projects or things like that.
Yeah,
Isn't that something we've talked about?
It's like, I'm old enough to remember a show called The Millionaire back in the day, Richard, back when, million was a lot of money. But, we give checks out to, to people in need. But a lot of middle-class families have really accumulated or individuals. And it's wonderful to remember those nieces and nephews. But it's just great to be able to touch your church or hospital or the facility which you've enjoyed so much. So I had the pleasure occasionally of sending fairly large checks to groups, to places that people care about it, including Covenant Woods, which is very rewarding.
Yeah. Charles, since we're still sticking with you right at the moment, why don't you tell people how they can get in touch with you if they want some of your services? Obviously,
I appreciate it. Thanks. It's it's Nance, Nance, the Nance Law Firm. Whenever I mention Nance in Hanover County, someone says, "Oh, are you kin to someone?" Yes. Are you kin to someone? Yeah, with Chesterfield as well. But nancelawfirm.net is the web address, and there's a lot to learn there about long-term care planning, how to integrate veterans benefits potentially into situations like this. Once a person goes into, I'm sorry, I need to be short enough to,
no, you're good.
Into assisted living, they may qualify for veterans benefits that they weren't aware of. So we try to answer all those questions prospectively, and like a lot of people in this particular field, there's no charge for checking it out. We have what I call a master class on the website that is really helpful to look at the kind of decisions that people are facing. And but we very much take the team approach, as you mentioned earlier, working with an advisor, with a charity, with the continuing care community as they make those decisions.
Great, thank you. And Richard, can you share with people how to get in touch with you? Obviously, you've got a lot of experience in this, and your insights and expertise are going to be very valuable.
Thank you, Jason. But before I do that, I thought of one other thing, differences between for-profit and not-for-profit.
Okay.
If you, Erickson, for example, I think is in the process of building a for-profit facility over close to Short Pump in Richmond. And I know for pretty much a fact, at least I'm pretty sure, that if you move into their facility, it's a fee for service, but their healthcare facility only will accommodate a small portion of their independent living residents. So therefore, you're not guaranteed healthcare at any cost if you need it. You may have to go someplace else. Whereas Covenant Woods guarantees you healthcare as part of their contract, so that if you need it, you're going to get it. And I know that they manage their healthcare facility very carefully, but in such a case, if it was full, then they guarantee you healthcare, period, some other place if you have to go there temporarily. So you're not forced out of the community, which I think is another huge benefit.
Sure.
My email is richard.adams@lpl.com. I'm not only a registered I'm also a registered representative and a registered investment advisor. So most of what I do now is fee for service. But initial consultations I never charge for, and I never have. Part of my service of being blessed is to give back to the community. And if I can help somebody out, I often do it at no charge if it is something I can do pretty quickly. My phone number is 804-592-5365. And as we discussed earlier, my office is located in downtown Midlothian, Virginia.
Richard, can you repeat the email address?
It's Richard.Adams@LPL, like Larry, Paul, Larry.com.
Great, thank you.
Because LPL is my broker dealer.
Linsco Private Ledger.
That's right.
Well, I'd like to, obviously, these are complicated discussions, and we try to get as much information out there as possible, but I'd love to thank both Charles and Richard for joining us today. You've made a complicated conversation a little bit simpler. And I think that was huge for you to take time out of your day to help and do that and help educate the people that are on our webinar. So I'd like to thank you both for joining us today. You've been great. And I'd also like to thank Anna and Logan and the rest of the Covenant Woods team. This has been a great Smart Senior series. I think we've really put together some really great information. I'm very much looking forward to what we're going to be doing in 2021. And so I'd just like to thank you, Anna and Logan, for allowing us to host this webinar series. And we look forward to what we're going to be doing in 2021 as well. And with that, I will turn it over to Anna and let her close out our webinar. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I do appreciate you all being on, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Yes, very special thank you to our panelists. And as Jason said, we are looking forward to 2021 with another Smart Senior series. And just a reminder, you can view all 5 of our webinars at covenantwoods.com/events. So thank you all for joining, and we look forward to seeing you next time.